Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another edition of Uncaged. My name is Mike Larkin. Joining me today, as always, is my boy Daniel Crimmins. Daniel, we are at episode 7. We're almost done season 2, folks. If you haven't checked out the first 6 episodes, go back and listen to them because
What are you doing?
what are you
What are you
doing?
doing?
Matt? What are you doing? But what we are doing is discussing another great topic and another great event in wrestling history, and that is the streak.
Even if you're not a WWE fan, really, you know of the streak. And if you're living under a rock, which is possible, let me illuminate you, enlighten you, if you will, as Dada Rhodes would say. I'm going to say the streak was by one of arguably the greatest characters in professional wrestling history, maybe even the greatest, The Undertaker. Who you're never going to find another character better than him. Not going to happen.
And it's funny because you bring up the streak in the Undertaker. Now, if I'm wrong, someone could correct me. Same with you, Dan. But I remember like it really didn't become like a thing until like '02 when he beat Flair, and then he puts up the 10-0, and they were like really making a big deal out of it when we got to like WrestleMania 8.
Yeah, it was right around there. So again, folks, if you don't know what the streak is, so the Undertaker went on a very impressive streak of 21 straight WrestleMania wins, no losses, and beating some of the absolute greatest of all time. I mean, we are talking guys like Superfly Snuka. We are talking guys like Kane, Triple H, Ric Flair, uh, Shawn Michaels a couple of times.
Randy Orton.
We're not going to talk about WrestleMania 19. We don't talk about that match. That
We
match never happened.
we've talked. We got to talk about it just because we gotta because it is fun and it's one of our favorites to laugh at, and we'll get to that. But for
One
me,
of the worst WrestleManias of all time.
for you, really, you're gonna go WrestleMania. A lot of people like WrestleMania 19. Shawn and Jericho, Rock and Austin 3, Brock and Kurt.
Okay, Jericho and HBK, great match.
Yep.
But the pay-per-view, by and large, you had Triple H beating Booker T in one of the most questionable WrestleMania decisions of all time.
They had Booker lose clean to a pedigree, and it sucked.
Like, if you're going to have him lose, have interference. Have,
Just,
something.
well, he was red hot, and I'm like, this is the time to put it on Booker T. Like
Which,
this,
again, was a
yeah.
Vince decision.
It's just again, it's a part of that reign of terror. But I mean, I look at it from a stance like this, and I'm going to say this to you because as we're talking about the streak, and we really look at WrestleMania, the definitive collection here, it's funny. Like we talk about Superfly Jimmy Snuka, that's what
Yeah.
started it all. Do you remember what the hell the backstory was? I remember like Jake Roberts and Johnny Gonzalez all did that, but what was the backstory of Jimmy Superfly Snuka becoming the first ever opponent for the Undertaker at a WrestleMania, and then
Well,
the streak started?
so I actually missed that one when I was a kid. The first time, the first Undertaker match that I ever can remember seeing was WrestleMania 8 when he wrestled with Jake.
That's one of my favorites because of the because everything that went down with that and the interview segment and the interaction that they had.
Well, yeah, because before then, really, the Undertaker had been a heel. Like he'd been, the bad guy. And, you know, then you're seeing the fans start to cheer Taker. To acknowledge that, hey, we like this guy. This guy's cool. And like you had mentioned, it wasn't really until later years when it became something. When it's they said they tell us Undertaker. You told the story a couple times where it just sort of happened, and I think he said it was. I think it was after Triple H at Mania 17, and they said, "Hey, you had 7 straight wins, and like nobody's beating you." And it was like they realized, like, huh? Oh yeah.
But that's the beauty of it, man. And I mean, like, I'll say this honestly, like the Jimmy Snuka match. If you remember, like you even said it, like it wasn't that good of a match. Like it was just it felt like it was there to me. But the Jake Roberts match, where you see the funeral parlor with Paul Bearer,
Oh yeah.
you see him and the Undertaker interacting. I mean, the match where he DDTs him on the floor and the Undertaker sits up, and then the Undertaker gets the win with the tombstone on the floor. Um, that was one of my things. Like that's where you know that you arrived when you're having a great match with such a
Oh,
Scientologist of wrestling
exactly.
like Jake Roberts. And I mean, I'm gonna say this, man, as far as streak goes, because then we did get to that point where Giant Gonzalez does get involved at WrestleMania 9, and
Yeah.
uh, the
Um,
Rumble.
I will say, as far as I think the match with Jake at Mania 8 was one of the absolute best that Taker had because, you and I have talked about ring psychology, and, one of the absolute greatest is Jake Roberts.
Mhm.
You know, if he had been in the WWE in a different time, he would have been WWE champion.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I think with him, like we always talk about his demons, but he was a
Yeah.
guy that you could see as a WWE champion. Such a great heel that trusts me, the subtleties, intricacies, and nuances. But with Jake, man, I think I look at it from a stance as well. If there's anybody that you're gonna be the great protagonist to the antagonist, like Jake was it. We remember the feud with Rick Rude. We remember a lot of stuff that happened there.
Oh
Like
yeah.
he was
The
so good.
Macho Man storyline.
The Macho Man storyline with the snake biting him on the arm, like everything worked. The storyline with the Ultimate Warrior, like he could do no wrong.
Yeah. Like Jake was like even still, like at his age, he's still effective on the microphone.
He is.
Look what he did with Lance Archer in AEW.
I'll even go back to '05, like one of my favorites going into the Undertaker Randy Orton match, which we'll get to here soon. But him RKOing Jake and him just like, you want to see some impact? I'll show you some impact. Like it was good. Just
Basically saying you will not beat the Undertaker.
that was one of the best parts of that story going into that match.
Oh yeah, like as far as talkers, and we could, and honestly, folks, season 3, best on the mic. Yeah, see what I did there? Best on the mic, yeah.
Saw what you did there, huh?
So we got best on the mic, who some of the best talkers. You cannot have one of those lists without Jake Roberts. You can't do it. It's not doable.
It's not, and I mean, like we mentioned, like going from Jake and Jimmy Superfly Snuka, legends to start out those streak, and then we mentioned Giant Gonzalez, the build from the Rumble to the WrestleMania 9 match. Man was a giant, El Gigante from WCW. I mean, could barely move. The suit was ridiculous. He had Harvey Whippleman with him as his
What
man.
was that? Like,
I don't know,
what was he
man.
supposed to? What were they going for? Like a Bigfoot kind of thing? Like,
Well, what were your initial thoughts when you first saw him at the Rumble, and then we get him and the Undertaker, and it looks very wonky. The match was terrible. It was a DQ, right? I think that he won by at WrestleMania 9. I think it was a DQ,
well,
right?
I think it was one of those things. Like they didn't know what to do. Like they thought he was going to be better than he was. But I remember just the first time that because back then I when I was a little kid, so I would have been. This would have been 93, so I would have been about 6-ish, 6, 7, or somewhere right in there. Um, we didn't have cable back then. Like we had ABC, CBS, and NBC. Like that was it. And my oldest brother had a friend, and he had a tape, WrestleMania 8, another tape of 9. And I remember WrestleMania 9 and seeing this guy, seeing Giant Gonzalez, and thinking like, even then, I'm like, what is this? Like, what? Like, I
That
know wrestling's fake, but uh, what are you going for here?
I never understood it either. I never understood the bodysuit. I never understood why Harvey Whippleman was with him. I didn't get the whole thing, even watching it years later. Like, I didn't get
And
it.
like, and I get Harvey Whippleman. He was somebody that he could get over. Guys who couldn't talk. Not Harvey Whippleman. Oh God, Jimmy Hart.
Yeah.
But even then, that was part of a bygone era where managers, were useful, and it's It's a lost art form. It really is.
It is. And I mean, the only thing I will say about the Giant Gonzalez match, Daniel, the entrance was cool with like the crow and the bird and
Yeah,
everything.
that was cool.
That was cool. But once the bell rang, it was the shits. It
You
was the
know, and I will say this, you talk about great WrestleMania entrances. Undertaker always usually had a good one. Whether simple like WrestleMania 20, like this, the last couple. The Boneyard, like I guess you could even give that as an entrance, entering into Metallica.
which still one of my favorites, but also just because of the fact that again you're in a pandemic era. It's a time where it's a lot of uncertainty going on in the world, and then you do
Yeah.
this. You do
Yeah.
this.
I remember with that, like there was people were saying WrestleMania. The first initially, remember they were saying, "Hey, WrestleMania is canceled. It's not gonna air."
And I remember like it was taking forever like for them to make a decision like are we gonna do the arena and the venue?
Yeah,
Or
I remember there was talk of them doing just like an empty arena, which I don't know. I think that would have been kind of cool. That would have been something different.
yeah, and the performance center happens and it's like, okay. And it's 2 nights. That was the start of the 2 night manias, which thank God, because it's become
It
better.
works.
It does. But that was
It,
one of my favorites because we had got to see the Undertaker as the American badass. We got to see
yes,
the man.
we got to see Mark Calloway, and you know what? Considering that was the last Mania that he did, should he have should he have retired earlier than that? That's debatable. Some say yes, some say who better to go out with than AJ Styles?
I mean, a guy who can make anybody look good, the guy who
Oh
respects
yeah,
him here so much, he wanted to wrestle him. Now, I'm going to block out the memory of Saudi Arabia where he just comes out and choke slams him 1, 2, 3. We're going to block that out. Where he just comes out and wins the freaking trophy. One choke slam, 1, 2, 3.
honestly, I have blocked out almost every Saudi show. Um,
Well, this last one I will say was better with Roman and Logan Paul and all that. They've been better.
and Logan Paul hurting himself.
Yes. But yeah, that was what we used to get, folks. But now the
And
Saudi shows
don't
are
forget when we also had Seth versus Bray. God rest his soul.
God rest his soul. Yes. Now, I mean, there was some. This wasn't WrestleMania, but Undertaker and Kane against Triple H and Shawn Michaels. Oh God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
A match where even Shawn Michaels and after that was just like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that.
We're getting too old for this. He turned into Danny Glover and Lethal Weapon. I'm getting too old for this shit.
But you know what? To his credit, he even admitted he did it for the money.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you're gonna make a buttload of money on this, and I mean, like you mentioned, like going out with AJ Styles, like such a great way to go out. And I mean, there's so many ways that he went in and he went out like just like a star. And we'll get to a lot of the Mania matches here, but one I have to mention that I think a lot of people forget is like WrestleMania 10 around that time. He, I believe, was hurt, and that's why he missed that WrestleMania. Like, do you remember? Like,
Yes.
do you remember who was originally supposed to face at WrestleMania 10 with the Rumble?
No, who was it?
Jeff Jarrett.
I mean, the depending on what the story would have been, maybe.
I mean, Jeff Jarrett had just come into the company. They were pushing him to the moon, and I mean, I get it.
To the moon.
And yeah, I mean, depending upon it, I mean, what the story, like you mentioned, I mean, we saw Undertaker and Jeff Jarrett later on in the WWF, but at that time, I think it would have been interesting.
Yeah, it could have been. I kind of wonder, like, because we got them in later years. I believe we got him in. Wait, so rest that was actually. Let me think about it, that was '94, right?
Yeah, it was MSG.
That was it because he had gotten hurt because of the Yokozuna match.
Yeah, and he was out for that. So I think they wrote him out just because he was hurt, and then he came back, like we talked about in the last episode with Undertaker.
We're not talking
Not
about
gonna
that
talk about
match.
that again. Okay,
We're
go
not.
back and listen to that episode.
It was deleted.
It's deleted, but yes.
We had WrestleMania night 95, which would have been Mania 11. He had King Kong Bundy. Again,
That
God rest his soul.
that match was terrible, though. That match was so
But
bad.
again, part of that, Mike, is you have two big guys. how are you going to get somebody the size of King Kong Bundy up for a chokeslam, up for a tombstone? You're limited in what you can do. So, as fans, it's very easy for us to think, well, it should have been this, it should have been that. You got to look at things for what they are, for what a talent can do. It's like Ric Flair. His match with Taker was not the best, but again, Ric Flair was not in his prime then.
No, and before we get to Ric Flair, and I'll come back to that point, but King Kong
Woo!
Bundy. Woo, woo! Now, if I remember the story for King Kong Bundy, was it Kama, the Godfather? They took the
Yeah,
they took the urn and
melted
they
it down.
melted it down to a chain, and King Kong Bundy was with Ted DiBiase and the $1 Million Corporation, and he wound up wrestling the Undertaker. Now, if I remember, he does not do the choke slam or the tombstone. He like body slammed him and he hit him with the running clothesline, that the diving clothesline that he does with the three. Like he didn't even do either move. If I
I don't
remember,
think he could.
I don't think he could. So I mean, that one was but I'll give before I go back to Ric Flair. Diesel. Can we mention him and Kevin Nash at WrestleMania 12?
And if I recall, Kevin Nash left shortly thereafter.
Oh yeah, I mean the whole storyline going into that was he lost the title to Brett. They did a cage match. Undertaker pulls him through the ring. They do the stuff with the casket where Diesel's in the casket. Then they get to the match. I didn't hate this match. I thought for another big man match, like you mentioned, this one was actually decent.
Yeah.
And then he wrestled Shawn Michaels for the title, and then Shawn Michaels beat him, and then the curtain call, of course. And yeah, that was Kevin Nash's last WrestleMania was with the Undertaker. Were you a fan of the Taker Diesel feud?
It was weird. Like, I remember being a kid, I liked both, so it's like I'm confused. Like, the little me is like, well, who do I cheer for? Like, I like Diesel, but I like the Undertaker. Like, I don't know.
Well, they had slowly turned Diesel heel, and I mean, for him and the Undertaker, two big guys, it worked. And I mean, I'll skip past to the Ric Flair one that you mentioned there. Ric Flair, who had just come back to the WWF at the time with the whole, the consortium was me. Now you and I were partners. And the whole Vince face with the pulling of the ear. And then he's like, again, we'll mention this. We've mentioned this on many a shows, Dan. The feud going into it, like, Ric Flair wants to wrestle The Undertaker. He costs him the match with The Rock at No Way Out. He beats up David Flair in the shower, bloodies him, has a match with David Flair on SmackDown, squashes him. Then Ric Flair and The Undertaker are brawling. Ric Flair accidentally hits a fan. Ric Flair gets arrested. They're in the boardroom with Linda and Vince, and, he wants to wrestle The Undertaker, and it's a no DQ. The build was very interesting going into that.
Wasn't one of the worst. I think that dubious honor goes to, I guess what number he was, number 6. One of the most infamous wrestlers, which the fact that he doesn't have an episode of Beyond the Ring or Beyond the Mat, you know who I'm talking about.
Oh God, if I'm thinking of 6, was this either the Psycho Sid one or the Big Boss?
Yes,
Okay.
it was Sid. Like,
Um.
Sid's a guy
Yeah.
who has a knack for no showing events.
Oh yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, there's a story where he tried to stab Arn Anderson.
Yep. That's the infamous WCW story. Yep.
Maybe that's why Arn's got the Glock.
He's got the because of Sid. Now, for me, dude, like if you remember, Bret Hart's talked about this. It was supposed to be him and Shawn at Mania, but Shawn lost his smile and did not want to put Bret Hart over. And then we got Bret and Stone Cold, which is still one of the best doggone submission matches ever at
Everything happens for a reason.
It does. And then we get Psycho Sid beating Shawn Michaels for the title, Shawn Michaels winning it back. And then I forgot before
Which
when he
made no
vacated it,
goddamn sense.
I mean, no goddamn sense. Psycho Sid, how did he win it back? Did he win like in a tournament? Was it a tournament?
If I'm not mistaken, and that whole time period was just weird.
Well, yeah, Brett was gone. He comes back, wants to wrestle Shawn. Shawn's like, no, I'm not putting you over.
Yeah, and then there was like a fatal 4-way which, if I'm not mistaken, was the first one that WWE had ever done.
Mm-hmm. Like that type of match for like a number one. Yep.
And there was, if I remember right, that year there was no Rumble winner.
For 97?
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's right. I think there was like a schmaz at the end with like Taker, Vader, and Sid and all those people. Yeah, and Bret
Like
Hart.
the person that won had already been eliminated. If I'm not mistaken, 97, it was a weird year for wrestling.
I
So,
remember 98 Austin winning it. Like I remember that. You
yep.
know, I think did he win it in 90? Did he win it in 97 too? No, he won it in 98 too. I think did Austin win it in 97?
I
I'm pretty
think
sure he did.
Austin won it 98, 99, and 2000. Like, I think he won it, like,
Well,
where was it?
99.
98?
No, no, 99 was Vince. 99 was Vince.
Actually, technically, no.
Eh,
Because if you remember, Vince gave it up.
that is true. He gave it to The Rock. I did it for The Rock.
He did it for The Rock.
I did it for the people. I'm gonna see who won the Royal Rumble. No, Stone Cold won. Yeah, he last eliminated Bret Hart.
Stone Cold! Stone
Stone
Cold!
Cold.
But you know what? So they didn't have a winner in 97, and it ended up, so Sid won the title in a fatal 4-way. I think Taker won some match on a Raw or something. I forget the exact storyline. Ended up being Taker and Sid, which, Undertaker won the Winged Eagle that Sid broke.
Yes, I
No,
remember that.
seriously, if you look at the WWE Championship at that time, it was broken.
Yeah.
Like, wrestlers were notorious for not taking care of belts. Like, that's why now they have multiple. So, okay, for example, we'll use Cody and Jay. Our new tag team champions by the time this airs. Actually, by the time this airs, they may have already lost the titles. You never know. So, when when the current champion, is getting ready to go out, they go into, the gorilla position, and they have like a little cabinet. Somebody working will open a drawer, grab the title, hand it to you. That's the TV copy. And that's why it always looks it looks nice and shiny, it's polished, and looks new. Then it goes out, shows up. Once they're off TV, once they're in the back, they hand it to them, and it goes back in the case. That's why, you see that infamous video of Brock throwing the Universal title at Vince, and you hear Vince shouting, "Asshole!" Which I still want to know what the story was behind that, but
It's another time, another day, and another place. But I mean, but Taker and Sid, let's talk about this here. Match was, um, yeah, it was something.
it was a Sid Vicious match.
It was a Sid Vicious match, like power bombs, and Taker sits up, Taker hits the tombstone, wins the title. Um, not one of his best ones. Not
No,
his best ones.
you talk about guys that almost never change their ring gear.
Yeah,
Sid,
Tiger. Yeah,
like, I think he's alternating from black, blue,
it was always
and
black and blue, like the
and
black.
red.
Yep, black
Black, blue, and
trunks,
red.
maybe like red trunks, and then the blue jeans, like
The jorts.
the jorts. Yes. But yeah, I mean, around this time period too, like going back to Ric Flair for a second, were you a fan of the not just the fact that again Flair at his prime, but Undertaker wanted to wrestle him, and they brought in Arn Anderson to do the spine buster spot. Like that was cool. That I will say was really really cool.
I am a mark for Arn Anderson. We've talked about it, but you and I don't. I really don't think Arn gets the credit he deserves.
Mhm.
I really don't. It's, you look at spine busters. Nobody has that snap like he does. Like, Triple H, I think, is the closest.
Mhm.
But like Arn just picking him up. I still think Arn could do a spine buster now.
Oh, I think so too. And I mean, like I look at what Powerhouse Hobbs is doing with it. It's good, but it's not Arn Anderson.
No.
And I mean, guys like that. So you had WrestleMania 18, which really showcased it. I mean, we're going through like good and bad here, which goes with any wrestler. I mean, professional
Yep.
wrestling, everything's subjective. But for me, I'm going to say this before we get to the two matches between here, because that's who comes up after Psycho Sid. I want to mention it to you, and you know where I'm going with this. I'm talking about WrestleMania 15, folks. The Undertaker and the Big Boss Man in the Hell in a Cell match. That was.
First time a Hell in a Cell would take place at WrestleMania.
Oh yeah, and I mean the storyline of burning the teddy bear, where to, Stephanie, and all this stuff, and just terrorizing the McMahons, and then Vince is like, "You're gonna wrestle Big Boss Man in a Hell in a Cell at WrestleMania." So you put the enforcer of the corporation against the head of the Ministry of Darkness, and we got dog shit, like literally dog shit.
Worse.
One of the worst Hell in a Cell matches ever, if not the
We
worst.
had a guy literally get hung
Here comes Edge and Christian out the rafters, and then we're gonna
with
hang them. Yes.
it's like the last shot of the match. You see the cell raising up with Boss Man hanging from a
Yeah. The
did you
news.
see that? Like it's clear. I haven't seen the match in years. I don't know if it's still on the network or if they've cut it out.
But I remember that image very vividly. And now, but you mentioned the harnesses, by the way, where they're coming down the harness Edge and Christian like you're Sting in WCW.
And they're getting
Jesus.
stuck.
Oh, and you can tell that they're stuck. Like you can tell, folks.
And I'm trying to let's see, let me think, what year was this? This would have been
This is 1999. This is WrestleMania 15. Yeah.
so this was, I think this was before Owen, wasn't it?
This was March of '99. So yeah, this was before Owen Hart.
Owen, I think, was passed in May, so like 2 months later.
Yes.
But
I mean,
no,
the match for me was just it was chair shots, it was big man brawling, and then a tombstone 1, 2, 3. It was not good. This was another one that was not the best of the Undertaker. I mean,
still
WrestleMania
not the worst.
still not the worst. Now for WrestleMania 2000, like he was hurt again. I think he hurt the groin. He had a groin injury at the time, and he was at like Access doing signings, but he was not competing at WrestleMania 2000, WrestleMania 16. But 2000 also gave us the year of the debut of the American Badass. What were your thoughts on the transition from the Phenom to the American Badass?
Like, oh, okay, you're normal. You talk like
You talk, you ride a motorcycle, you're being you.
you're jamming out to some Kid Rock,
Yeah, and
which no
Kid Rock.
comment.
No comment. I mean, well, what did you prefer, the American Badass theme or keep rolling, 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 rolling? What?
I honestly preferred "You Done It Now,"
You done and made a big mistake. It's still
which
so.
now he's back to that, or no, he's back to the American Badass theme.
Yeah, when he came out and confronted LA Knight, he came out to the American Badass and
Yeah,
popped. Yeah, and people still popped. Like, first of all, I got to bring this up. When he did that, now, did you notice how slow he was going with that motorcycle? Yeah, that entrance trying to get out there with that big
yeah.
ass motorcycle.
Like it looked like the bike wouldn't start
Yeah, that was the thing. Like, it was cool to see him in on the bike, but it was just it was awkward, a little wonky, but it was cool.
because he said he's done being the dead man.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna come out as the American Badass, and I'm gonna do me.
But NXT this week, which
Yeah.
yeah,
By the time you hear this, it's gonna be loaded.
you
Yeah.
and I are even going to be on NXT this coming week.
Oh, of course, yeah. It's gonna invite everybody, front row, baby. But yeah, you heard the gong at the end of the commercial. You know, you know.
Maybe no, or maybe it's the fake Undertaker. We don't know. Nobody's seen him in years.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Fuck that guy. Like literally fuck that guy. So besides the next in our
No,
time.
Undertaker's ex-wife already did that.
Oh man. You remember he seriously got that tattoo that removed? Remember he got the Sarah tattoo removed from his neck? Like at all
And
the
it covered
places.
up.
Yes. Now out
It's
of
still there. It's still there.
my thing here, Dan, and I know Cody Rhodes has that nightmare factory thing on his neck. But why would you tattoo your wife's name out of all parts? Because people do this, but why would you put it on like the neck and the throat area, like around here? Like, why would you do that?
Why would you tattoo a name at all?
People do that. I mean, love, passion. I don't get it, but I mean, you never know how long you're gonna be.
Stupidity.
Stupid idiots. Yes. So, all right, I got to ask you now because next in our timeline here, we'll talk about the two Kane matches. One I was at. I was at WrestleMania 20, so I'll talk about my experience in a second. But 14, Kane debuts, beats up Dude Love, Mankind, beats up everybody. Then we find out that
Pete
he's
Rose.
Pete Rose. Tax the Undertaker at Bad Blood 97 against Shawn Michaels. Paul Bearer, we get the story, Undertaker's brother. He was killed. He thought he was killed in the fire, but he wasn't. He's sleeping with the Undertaker's mama. Royal Rumble comes. They're teaming against DX and Shawn. Burns the casket. Then we get to WrestleMania 14, which I'll talk about the match in a second. But what were your initial thoughts of how we went into one of the most iconic storylines in WWE history?
I love that storyline. I remember thinking like that summer, the blackmailing of the Undertaker, saying, and Mike, if you remember, that was really the first time that we'd gotten like behind the scenes, like we saw Undertaker normal. Like we realized that, hey, this guy's got a past.
Well, it's the promo of, yes, my parents were burned in a fire, and he's talking all normal and he's vulnerable, and like Kane chokeslam and the Undertaker on top of his supposed to be mom in the casket, and just everything that went into it, and
Well, no, not only that, there was the storyline of
he
Paul
had a
Bear saying, you come back to me or I'm going to tell the truth of who you are.
yep, and you find out that he has a brother, which you don't even think of that. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't even think he has a brother. And first of all, best repackaging ever of Glenn Jacobs from Isaac Yankem to the fake Diesel to Kane.
Yeah.
He had a time, but this is one of the most iconic feuds, and I think you have to think Taker vouched for him because he did
Oh,
see
yeah.
something. Yeah, he vouched, and you could tell that they were having fun. The best thing is they didn't really touch a lot. I mean, Undertaker he was trying to get goaded. Kane tried to go the Undertaker, but it didn't work. Um, WrestleMania 14, man. Again, we talk about entrances. One of the best entrances with the fire, the druids. It was amazing.
I mean, Taker knows how to make an entrance.
He does, and I mean, it made sense from the storyline standpoint of him beating him with three tombstones. Like it just made sense, and it really showcased how much the Kane character is such a monster in his own right. So everything was done perfectly for the beginning of that feud.
And you think longevity, like besides Undertaker, Kane, Glenn Jacobs, like iconic.
Mhm. Iconic. The WrestleMania 20 experience. So I was there for the Undertaker's re-debut as the Phenom slash mix with American Badass. Came out with the Druids, the match with Kane. I'm gonna be honest with you. The entrance was the best part. It was great to see the Undertaker. Was the match the best? No, but it was a
No.
moment. It was great to see Paul Bearer back. Oh
And
yeah,
he was in really rough shape.
he was. But that image still.
I think
You're
he's lost his wife not long before this, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I think it was. I mean, you're going through a tough time anyway. You're losing your loved one. You don't want to do much. You're just eating, and he's coping. But I got to say, for the performance that he did, that whole where he looks at him, he goes, "You're no son of mine."
My son, you're no son of mine.
Then he comes out, the Undertaker. Were you a fan of? So he goes from the Barrett Alive match with Mr. McMahon, and he goes to bury Vince. There's an explosion, the firework. Kane buries him alive. He does the eulogy for the Undertaker, and then you see the signs of where it all begins again. You see the ring moving. You see him distracting him in the Royal Rumble. You see it on various
You
Raws, the
hear the
ring,
gong.
the gong, and everything. Were you a fan of this storyline going into WrestleMania 20, and what were your thoughts on the match?
I liked it. It was something different. Kane had been on a tear. We thought, well, maybe he's going to win the Rumble. Thank God he didn't. Can't remember who won the Rumble that year.
Yeah, well, we know, but we're not going to say it. We're not going to say it. It was that guy. It was that guy.
Yeah, I can't think of the guy's name.
No.
So I kind of thought Kane was going to win it. Um, but then the lights go out and you hear the gong, which him just from his sound effect. So I thought that was cool.
Now, the best part for me was Kane just selling, like, I buried you alive. I buried you alive. You're not
You're
real.
not real.
Real. Did you like the fact that his return was a mixture? I mean, he had the coat, he had the hat. It was a mixture between the Phenom and the American Badass.
Oh, absolutely. Looking at it now, I don't think if he'd gone straight back to who he was, with the long coat and the hat, people wouldn't have been cool with that because we'd already seen the hey, he ain't a dead guy. But what he was doing wasn't working. So, you need that kind of like that happy medium. And we got it. We got it.
Agreed. And I mean, before we get fully into Phenom slash American Badass, there was one last American Badass match in between. And you know where I'm going. He mentioned it earlier. WrestleMania 19. It was originally supposed to be The Undertaker and Nathan Jones against The Big Show and A-Train. Now, Nathan Jones, the Colossus of Baga Road, literally was in jail, folks, in an Australian jail. I remember he beat Bill DeMott like really quickly, and he was supposed to have a match with Chuck Palumbo, but he beat him up in the back. The Undertaker was training him, and he just knocked the guy out. And he's like, Nathan, Nathan. He's trying to like calm him down, and then the Undertaker was feuding with the Big Show at No Way Out. Then the A Train got involved, and then it turns into a handicap match because the full-blooded Italians, Nunzio, Chuck Palumbo, and Johnny the Bull, beat up Nathan Jones in the bathroom before before WrestleMania, and then he comes out at the end and spin kicks the Big Show, and then the Undertaker tombstones A Train for the win. Which a lot of people thought shouldn't he be disqualified? Because technically speaking, Nathan Jones, like they just said, it was a handicap match, and Nathan Jones just comes out there, but he was originally supposed to be in the match. Um, he sucked, by
It's
the way.
WWE logic. It doesn't
I
matter.
mean, yeah, man. Like we talked about last episode, but Lex Luger won, but he didn't really win the title. So you have Nathan Jones, who I remember seeing later on as a part of Team Lesnar with Matt Morgan, an early appearance of Matt Morgan later in the year. He couldn't wrestle. Like the reports of just him on the house shows, as Bruce Pritchard would say, he wasn't ready. He was not ready to be on WrestleMania,
But he didn't try.
and he didn't try. He just didn't work. I mean, what were your thoughts on? I mean, going into this, trying to do something with this newcomer, teaming him with the Undertaker, giving him the keys to the castle, so to speak, against Big Show and A Train. What were your thoughts on the match and the feud going into it?
When you try and rush somebody to TV, it doesn't work.
No.
It's a shame NXT didn't exist back then because I think he would have benefited from NXT.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, dude, you had OVW and Deep South Wrestling, but I mean, it's not what we have now. I mean, it's still great farm territory, but
Oh
it's
yeah,
not.
agreed.
Yeah, but it's not like what we have now.
No, should be, but
Could be. You know, but they rushed him. They thought he had a good look, and I mean, I'm going to say right now, I remember the Team Lesnar run. Like he didn't improve. Like I mean, he came back later in the year, but he still, yeah. But it was one of those dampers on the Undertaker's thing. I mean, he came out with the flag. He came out to Roland, which was cool. That was another great entrance. I will state that. But yeah, let me move on. Before we get to Randy Orton, we got to talk about this because this was another one that was kind of meh. Mark Henry in a casket match at WrestleMania 22.
And Mark Henry almost ended the streak,
Yeah, I know.
but he refused it. Like he said no.
Like, why? I mean, I get they were. Here's a storyline. So Mark Henry takes out the Undertaker, like beats him down after a match with Kurt Angle. Randy Orton talk about squash his ass. He puts him through the table. Like this was something that when it comes to Mark Henry and the Undertaker, nice from the big man side of things. They're giving Mark Henry the push. This is the start of like him being that badass again on SmackDown. He had beaten up Batista. He's helping out Molina. He's helping out Davari. Like they're doing a lot with Mark Henry here. This match was what it was. It was kind of slow. It was a typical big man match. Undertaker wins, but for that year in 2006, what were your thoughts of them putting him with Mark Henry and the fact that it was a casket match?
It was what it was. It wasn't one of my favorite manias. There were See, let me see what Mania this was Mania 22. Like the 20 Manias, like 22 up, were not great. They weren't good years.
For me, like, and here's how I look at it, because Kurt Angle's talked about it on his podcast. They had a great match at No Way Out 06, one of their best matches ever for the title. If you've never seen it, go out of your way. But Kurt Angle, this was originally supposed to be, I'm gonna say, Kurt Angle's match, because I mean, we did Angle, Mysterio, and Orton where Ray won, but could you
Great
imagine?
match, by the way.
Great match, absolutely. But could you imagine if we had gotten the Undertaker and Kurt Angle at this WrestleMania?
Oh God, that would have been good.
But they went with Taker and Mark Henry. But I mean, hey, speaking of something that was good, I love the
Well,
story of
because they
that.
even said like they even offered the streak to Kurt Angle, and he said absolutely not.
No, and I mean, Kurt had come a
And
long way.
this was also like at a time when people they were starting to talk about ending the streak, and it's the number of people that were supposed to end it but said no.
I mean, perfect example, Randy Orton, because the young guy, the up and comer, the legend killer, and then Randy's like, no, I'm not beating him at WrestleMania. No, like that's not happening. And I mean, like you mentioned with Mark Henry and Kurt Angle, like great opponents. And I mean, Kurt would have been something because he was a wrestling machine. But no, and I mean, what going back to Randy Orton, man, I'm going to say one of my favorite RKO's from that feud, the Stacy Keibler RKO. That message is simply this: she took a hell of an RKO.
Oh yeah, kudos to her.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean the slap and then the lightning and everything and the fire at the contract signing and he wanted to do something like I remember superstar Billy Graham giving him advice, go out there and make an impact. You know what I'm saying? Like superstar Billy Graham, the Jake Roberts thing we mentioned on the highlight reel. What were your thoughts of them? So Randy Orton was transitioning back into a heel because if you remember, he had the 1 month world title run where Randy Orton even said he was immature to have the title at the time. He's a baby face. He's going against Triple H at the Rumble. And now we're going towards Mania season. He's back to being a heel. He's the legend killer, Undertaker, Randy Orton. What were your thoughts?
I remember he hit Undertaker. Was this when he cold cocked Taker, or was that a couple of years later? I
No,
think it was this year.
no, it was this year because like he slapped him, he stiffed him very hard in the ring. This was the date. This was the re-debut of Cowboy Bob Orton because he had gotten ducked into the Hall of Fame and he tried to help
And
Randy
the cast.
the cast and he tried to help Randy win. It didn't happen. One of my favorite sequences. He goes for the choke slam into the RKO. What a beautiful spot.
Oh, like when you think of like all the RKO's, like that's got to be up there. Like I mean, still, it doesn't top the Evan Bourne RKO.
Oh, the shooting star, the airborne
Yeah.
into the RKO. Yeah. But Taker and Orton, I mean, for what we had gotten from Kane the previous year and Nathan Jones, but like this one I enjoyed. Like I really did enjoy this one.
Oh yeah, like Taker. Again, I've said it. You said it. If you can't get a good match out of him, it's not a him problem. It's a you problem.
That segues, man, because I like how you stated that there. Like we say a lot on this show. Batista at the time, I'm gonna put it bluntly, he was the drizzling shits because you could tell he was just kind of phoning it in. Like he had matches with Kennedy, he had the matches with Booker, he had the matches that were kind of meh. Like once we
Well,
got
yeah.
to oh, but it was bad. Like he was having shit matches. I'll put it the bluntest way possible. Then he gets into the Batista Undertaker against Cena and Shawn Michaels going into WrestleMania 23 of that No Way Out was good. But like Undertaker made him work. It's like motherfucker, we're gonna go out there and we're gonna have a fucking great match. And if you don't end up your end of the bargain, I'm gonna be pissed. And well, that match was doggone good. That match
Well,
was really good.
I think they both kind of had a chip on their shoulder because they thought because at the time Batista was world champion. He figured I'm working Taker, so we're going
Yes,
on last.
but it wasn't the case.
No, no. I think
Cena,
it was
yeah, Cena and
Cena
Shawn.
and
Cena and Shawn.
Triple H.
Well, that was 2006. 2007 was Cena and Shawn.
Yeah.
But still,
But they kind of had a chip on their shoulder, like, okay, we're gonna make you regret not putting us last.
and I'll say this right here, folks: Undertaker and Batista, and I like Cena and Shawn Michaels. That was a great match, but they did something, man. Taker and Batista was I was even better than Shawn and Cena.
Oh yeah, like Batista is capable of having great matches.
if he works with the right person. Like him and Shawn Michaels had great matches together.
Well, I think at that time he was a made guy, and
And
you get to a certain point, you're just like, I've got my spot. I'm not. Why try?
and I think also the point of the matter is too, like when he got to SmackDown, like he hated being on SmackDown. Like he had no friends, like at
Like
all.
he didn't want to work Tuesday. He wanted the Monday schedule.
He wanted the Monday schedule, and I mean, still, I enjoyed that feud. And first of all, what I also loved is you had Undertaker at the time, folks, and now he wins the Royal Rumble, and you have to choose who you're going to face, right? So they lined up John Cena, Batista, and Bobby Lashley. And I mean, he went on every show, but I was like, you doggone know that the Undertaker is not going to fight Bobby Lashley for the ECW.
No,
Just come the fuck on, like you win the Rumble and you want to go for the ECW championship. No, you knew Bobby Lashley was not going to be that guy. But they had
like
teased.
he's standing like,
Yeah, okay, I'm here. I'm here. Let's see where this goes. You already know
like
he's
you really people really thought that he was going to choose Lashley.
no. Well, the Cena thing. Can you imagine? Obviously, we'll talk about the Cena match here in a second. But could you imagine if at WrestleMania 23 we got Taker and Cena?
See, would the streak have ended then?
Well, that's another thing to think about. Because from a standpoint, you think if there's anybody else at that time, John Cena, like John Cena was red hot, and he was the one going toward the future. Like this is who we're focusing on. So, you know,
But the only issue to that, Mike, is people would have booed him. People
oh,
would have, looked at it and like, no, I'm
not
not
accept,
doing it.
not doing it, not doing it. I mean,
I mean, you saw the reactions to when certain somebody ended it, and there's just like people. It's still one of the most divisive decisions in history.
so we'll skip that timeline. We'll go. We'll just go right into it because we mentioned Taker and Batista. That was a hell of a one, but and we'll go back here. But Taker and Brock Lesnar, the guy, people's faces. Oh my God! Oh my God! Paul Heyman, Taker and Brock Lesnar got concussed earlier in the match. The
Like
build just
right in the beginning.
like right in the beginning, like the build of Taker just choke slamming Brock through the table while stabbing him with the pen. The whole build was very interesting, and you're going in there thinking, all right, he's going to beat Brock. It's WrestleMania. You know
Yeah.
he's Brock. Then he gets concussed early in the match, like you mentioned, and then third F5, 1, 2, 3. What? What?
I remember I was watching it with my dad at the time, and I just remember, the build up, like you had mentioned. Brock was pissed because he, didn't win the Rumble, didn't get a title match. Taker called him out. No. So then finally, Taker just doesn't take no for an answer and signs a contract in Brock's own blood. And then, the match, it was horrible. Looking back at it now, the match sucked.
Oh, it was
Because
terrible.
they were both. Undertaker was hurt, like badly hurt. To the point where, honestly, looking back, they should have stopped it.
Oh, agreed. And I mean, he did the walkout after he lost. He went out like a man.
And
And then
collapsed.
yeah, and clap. People clapped, and also that image of 21-1. Like you see it on there, and it's like, oh,
I remember watching it with my dad. You hear the third F5, Brock hits it, and you hear 1, 2, and you think he's gonna kick out 1, 2, and then you hear 3, and the silence. And I remember looking at my dad. We're both thinking like, what the hell just happened? Like, what did we see?
I
And
was
like
in reaction.
the bell didn't ring. So, and this is a genius decision. Nobody knew.
No,
Commentators didn't even know.
nope.
Literally nobody knew. So you see it and you're just like, was that supposed to happen? And kudos to the cameramen. They fought the faces of the fans, especially that one fan, the shocked Undertaker guy. Literally like,
And you just saw people going, "Wow!" Like you mentioned there, and then putting their hands on
and
their
they
head.
all thought it was like a screw up. And then you see the graphic 21-1. And then, of course, we got the My client, Brock Lesnar, conquered the streak. And then there is the one behind the one in 21 and 1. You know, and we can debate till we're red in the face. Was Brock the right person?
Eh,
Yes and no. But see, folks, here's the thing. Taker, to give you an idea of how bad he was hurt, the second he got to the back, he collapsed. They had to have an ambulance come in. Vince left WrestleMania 30. Has never happened before, never since. Vince wasn't there for the main event.
well, they have that footage of like him like saying we got to get a medic here, and he went to the hospital with the Undertaker, and he left WrestleMania like Daniel mentioned. It's unheard of because you never see Vince leave that gorilla position.
No.
But it was his boy, like it's his friend of 30 plus years. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like fuck, like he did what he needed to do. That's people shit on Vince McMahon, but I will say
Yeah.
that's that's a class act right there. And I mean, we debate like Brock Lesnar should have done it, but I mean, we'll go a year earlier than that. Him and CM Punk, the feud of pouring the ashes of Paul Bear on there, emptying the urn, dropping the urn, being
Paul
down.
had just died, I think.
Yeah, he had just died, and like they did the graphic, he comes out, and people are like, "You piece of shit!" Like he's paying tribute, and then he interrupts it. Like, what were your thoughts of? And possibly there was talk of Punk maybe doing it because again, great match. I enjoyed the Punk Undertaker match.
Oh, yeah.
But
It was
what
a
were your
good storyline,
It
but
was. But what were your thoughts of possibly CM Punk doing it at the time? Like he was red hot. He won the Fatal Four Way to get there. What were your thoughts on the Punk Taker thing?
Punk has talked about it, that he wasn't in a good place to have that match. He was already at that point was checked out.
Hmm.
Would he have stayed if that happened? Maybe. Maybe we'll get that when he comes back.
Yeah, because I mean, we're already hearing it, folks, that he's gonna probably be at Survivor Series. We, it's coming, and yeah, I mean, at this time period, he was still pissed off. I think with the way he was booked, like everything that came off the Ryback feud, everything that came,
We don't
was
talk about that guy.
yeah after that feud, and then he was just kind of floundering, and then oh, you're gonna wrestle the Undertaker, and I don't know. He's always grumpy though, CM Punk. That's CM Punk is a grumpy man. He's old, he's tired, and he works with fucking children. But I mean, before we get to the to the two Taker matches and the three Triple H matches, there was another one that also sticks out between those time periods. Edge, the feud going in for the World Heavyweight title. I personally enjoyed it.
I did
I
too, and they even offered it to Edge. They offered the streak to him, and he even said no.
and they went on last, and the infamous Charles Robinson running down that stage, boy, running down that aisle.
And I will tell you, good old Lil Nate, he's one of the nicest guys. I met him at a house show. Really cool dude.
Mhm. But he sprinted. He sprinted.
He booked it. Those are not small entrances.
No, that's long, long.
Like, I mean, even compared to now, like, he booked.
He booked it. Like he literally booked it.
Bet he did.
And this was where Undertaker would win the World Heavyweight Championship. But here's the interesting part: the Major Brothers got involved. Myers and Brian Myers, Kurt Hawkins, and Zack Ryder. Great spot there, but also the fact that he did not win it with a choke slam, Daniel. He did not win it with the tombstone. He won it with the Hell's Gate, the triangle choke.
When Undertaker was trying to be like a UFC guy.
I mean, he had the taking care of business Dragon Sleeper, but he had other submissions that were kind of like forgotten. But yeah, Hell's Gate, that good old triangle choke. Yes. Now, before we get to Triple H and Shawn Michaels here, there was another guy who you believed should have ended it and had the pass torch to him just because Taker wasn't there. He carried the feud. Undertaker and Bray Wyatt the following year, WrestleMania 31. Woo!
That build up was perfect. It was up until that time, no one had seen The Undertaker. He hadn't been on TV, hadn't done a pay per view.
Mm-mm.
And that was the inaugural Fastlane,
Yes,
if I'm
where
not
Bray.
mistaken.
Yes, Bray comes out the
Which,
casket.
folks, oddly enough, as Mike and I are recording this episode, Fastlane 2023 just ended a little bit ago.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of ironic, when you think about almost as if it was meant to be.
Well, I mean, hey, that's what we do, man. This is what we do, and it's what we love talking about is pro wrestling. But I
That
concur.
lights go out, and I think it would open the show, and you hear the gong, and then you see, the Undertaker, the Druid theme, and you see the Druids wheeling out a casket, and you're just like, oh my god, he's back.
He's back.
And then they open the casket, and somebody sits up, and it's Bray,
That smile on his face
and they'll laugh.
and the laugh. Can you feel it in the air tonight? There's a wicked feeling in the air tonight. Can you feel it, man?
And
Oh,
him just calling Taker out.
now I will say this about the match. Like Bray's another one that kicked out of the tombstone, but for a first opponent back and Undertaker to regain his confidence, like Triple H, you see him talking him up. I enjoyed the match. I really did. The sit up, the
Brock even told him, he said, "You're the fucking Undertaker.
yes.
Remind them who you are."
Exactly. And I like the match from the sit up to the crab walk
Yeah.
to everything that went into it. Like that was a great match. I mean, we would see more of them that year, but for a match back, I enjoyed it. I really did.
Yeah, and it's in retrospect, Monday morning quarterbacking, as they say.
Yeah.
I would have done it where with WrestleMania 30, I would have flipped opponents. So I would have had Cena wrestle Brock, and I would have had Bray wrestle Undertaker or Work Taker, as they called it, and I would have had I would have had Bray be the one. But hey, Vince didn't see it.
But what we did see, and again, before we get to Triple H and Shawn, because this is what we do, folks. We bounce around. We tell you the good. We tell you the bad. We give you our thoughts. And we're going to give you our thoughts on something else here. Because right after Bray was Shane McMahon in the Hell in a Cell match. Um, yeah, he's back. The assets, if it wasn't for me, this company would not be around. And Shane
Yeah,
was, Shane doing the
and
promo.
it was weird because so it was 2016. I remember like it was yes like so that was the year that my dad had passed, and I just remember Shane comes back. He wants his inheritance, spoiled little rich kid. Of course he does.
Hmm.
And Ben says, I'll tell you what we'll do. You want control of the company? You got it. You just have to beat an opponent of my choosing. And you think he's going to choose, someone else.
Hmm.
It's Undertaker in a Hell in a Cell. And it wasn't the old school Hell in a Cell, it was the newer, bigger.
Yep. That was the
And
newer.
of course, Shane jumped off it because it's Shane. And, of
It's
course he does.
it's in Shane's nature, and he got to have his kids do the Shane O'Mac shuffle with him in the entrance, which was cool. I will say that was very cool.
The
And
son that made his debut tonight, they showed up
yes,
in the crowd.
that was what my dad and I we were laughing because if for the as again we're recording this after Fastlane. Declan McMahon, Shane's son, and the Indiana Hoosiers, man, football. That
And
kid.
if you remember, he also made it. He actually really made his debut at WrestleMania 20
Oh yes, I
as a
remember.
baby,
Yes, I
where
remember
it all begins
again.
again.
I remember that video package. You're correct. You're correct, Mr. Daniel Kermans. Yes. Oh, but no. So he called him a rich boy. Now, Shane gave him a black eye, if you remember, from hitting him with the monitor
Yeah.
on Raw. And he got a receipt for that in the
Oh,
match.
he got it. He got more than one. Like
Yeah.
Taker's the old school man tell you that if you're gonna hit him, okay, but just know he gonna get you back.
And he did big time in that match. What were your thoughts on the match with Taker and Shane McMahon? Besides the crazy elbow drop?
The storyline it made no sense. Like, yes, he was Vince's guy, but like it should have been a heel.
But also saying, why would the Undertaker want to help Vince McMahon?
Exactly. He hated Vince. Like, this is a guy who kidnapped his daughter,
Mm-hmm.
eh, tried to set his house on fire, because remember that happened too.
Yes, with the burning symbol outside the McMahon home.
You know, I get it's wrestling. We're expected to suspend our logic,
And
but
our disbelief, yeah.
do not insult our intelligence.
Fucking just burning that symbol right outside the McMahon.
Whatever.
Whatever. But yeah, the Shane McMahon feud was made no sense. But yeah, that was our first introduction back to Shane. Here you go, pal. Taker, Hell in a Cell, WrestleMania.
And of course, Taker won.
The Taker won with the tombstone. Um, Again, we gotta mention this one too because you brought it up. The Undertaker and Roman Reigns the following year. People booed.
Which
Yeah,
Taker's even admitted he hates that match.
I mean, he watched it back on the documentary that he did, The Last Ride, and he was just like, oh, you could see him like watching it with Michelle, and he's cringing at how bad it was. He's like, I shouldn't have come back. I should not have come back.
And he even admitted he wasn't in shape.
Now, if you recall, like he was in the Rumble that year, and everybody was pissed because Roman was number 30, and everybody was like, "Oh God, they're gonna have him win the Rumble." And him and Taker went at it. You could tell that's the direction they're going because he eliminated him. But if you really, really saw him in the Rumble too, like he was, I even remember looking at him like, "Oh my God, like he
It
was."
was time. It was time to go.
It was time to go. What were your thoughts on the storyline going into it besides the Rumble? He remember he did that promo. He's holding the shovel and he looks like he's burying like, his next victim, so to speak, right? Like he even looked very like he looked pale. He didn't look good. You know what I'm talking about, right? Like that
Well, if
image
I
of
remember right, this was right around the time that he was recovering from hip replacement surgery.
yeah, like he had wrestled Shane the year before and then he comes back with Roman and I'm like then it's in like a no DQ match and stuff and I'm like, dude, like you should not be coming back for this.
Like, I get loyalty, and I think loyalty is great. It's great, and Undertaker is gonna go down as one of the greatest of all time. It's you, you see people that have never worked with him in other companies. Will Ospreay has complimented the Undertaker. You have guys in AEW that have never worked Taker, never worked with him. Respect that. He called MJF the greatest character currently around, and he is. And MJF responded. He said, to receive a compliment like that from somebody like The Undertaker means the world.
Well, Undertaker's also a very old school guy, like you mentioned. Like he likes characters like that. That's very old school. Like
People refer to him as sort of like the godfather of pro wrestling, like the, Don Corleone godfather. Like, you kiss the ring. Like, if Taker's there, you pay your respects.
oh yeah. And he took that with such a great charge during his tenure as the locker room leader in WWE, and especially just as a whole. But you go from Roman Reigns, and I'm going to ask you, man, putting the hat down and everything, the jacket, like that's it. You saw people crying after
Yeah.
that. Oh my
His
God.
own wife.
Yeah. Michelle McCool and his kids were crying. Like, now I'm going to ask you because it does get very emotional. Were you very emotional seeing that as well? Like watching him just hat down, jacket down, boom.
And just kind of standing there looking around like,
Yeah, like this is it.
and honestly, that should have been it.
So, okay, he wanted to make up for this, and he thought this next one was going to be like a 20-minute match, but it's like, no, you talk shit about me, 5 minutes, that's it. So we get to the following WrestleMania. John Cena doesn't have an opponent. He's sitting out in the crowd. He's watching with the people. He's beating up Kane. He's calling out the Undertaker. Talk about Instagram videos, really much humanizing the Undertaker.
Elias.
We'll get to Elias. So he's humanizing the Undertaker, beating up Kane. He's doing the tombstone. He's doing anything he can to get his attention. So he's like, oh my God, he has an opponent. He's running to the back. John Cena sprinted to the back. You want to talk about sprinting to the back? John Cena sprinted to the back.
It was is he going to show up? Is he not going to show up? And then I think it was actually I think it was Charles Robinson again
Yeah.
who said, he's
He's
here, and you should just like, he's here.
you have an opponent, and he's so giddy, and
It's
then
like, dude, you're wearing your ring gear already. What are you doing? Like, why? Just to
I'm
be like,
just
okay, go, just walk, get in the
he's like
ring.
he's like, no, I'm a fan. I gotta get ready for this. Oh God, it was.
But you're wearing your gear, dude. Like,
I
what?
don't I don't get it. But whatever. Now
Wrestling logic.
that's
Wrestling
like
logic.
logic. And then Elias comes out, and John Cena's like, no, no. And then he comes in the ring, gets beat down. Does Elias? And then he's walking up the ramp, and then the gong hits. You done it now. You done it. Made a big mistake because the Undertaker comes out and just Cena's in shock. They go into the ring. It's literally the best way I can describe it to you, Daniel. It's the greatest hits of the Undertaker: boot,
Yeah.
snake eyes, the clothesline, the old school choke slam, tombstone, 1, 2,
I
3.
think it was like the last time he did old school because you could tell he couldn't
Oh,
do.
he no,
And
but
he even admitted that he couldn't do this. He couldn't do old school anymore. He couldn't balance on the ropes.
it was tough. I even watched him trying to do that in that match with Cena. You could tell he was in pain. He's like, oh God, like oh, please don't fall, please don't fall.
No, because like you watch like the old Undertaker, even like Ministry, like you see me, he used to do that move.
Precision.
Like he could do it. He could probably do like a whole lap around the ring.
Okay, so I will say this: the Cena. Did you like the fact that it was a squash and beating Cena like in that
Yeah,
fashion?
for what it was, you know. Again, I mentioned this earlier. As fans, we tend to think we want this. We want it to be this way. No. Like you got to appreciate for what it is. He was not going to be who he was in 92, 93, whatever. Appreciate it for what it was. Should he have come back? No. He should have been done. That should have been it.
And we've said this earlier in the show here, folks. Like the AJ Styles match, the production of it was amazing, and that was a great way to go out. Him on that motorcycle, just like it was great. It was a great way to send off. But before we even get to like where we'll talk about the Hall of Fame and we'll talk about the tribute that they did at Survivor Series, but the other two matches we have to mention because again, we really went through our thoughts of what we saw, especially from the earlier stages and the transformation of the character here. But for me, WrestleMania 25, 26, 27, 28, the two matches with Shawn, the two matches with Triple H. Shawn didn't want to wrestle anybody else but Taker, and then he retired him. The match going into, sometimes it's hell trying to get to heaven. And Shawn coming out with the white, very much angelic,
Mm-hmm.
like, coming down from heaven. Two of my favorite matches in that series, man. Like, oof, so good.
Like let me ask you. We've talked about all the most of the Undertaker matches at Mania. If you had to pick one,
Mhm.
and mind you, we're talking. Um, Finally, I think we're at like what 24-2, something like that.
Yes.
If you had to pick, we're talking 26 WrestleManias, which there will never be anything like that ever again.
No, if I had to pick, and I liked them all, and then before we get talking to Shawn and Triple H, if I had to pick, well, that's a tough one. You cannot beat WrestleMania 25. You cannot, just because it was great from the story perspective. They went out there, went balls to the wall, kicking out of tombstones, taking out of sweet chin music. Of course, the spot where dumbass Deuce didn't catch the Undertaker, and he took that hell of a bump. That was horrible. Uh, but it was so memorable. They created magic that night, and that was the best match on that card. So I'll go WrestleMania 25 with Shawn. How about you?
For me, WrestleMania 28 versus Triple H, Hell in a Cell with HBK as a special referee.
And
The story that they had told, you know, Triple H was like, I know I can beat him. I just need one more shot. And it was, well, is Shawn gonna, what's he gonna do? Is he gonna call it down the middle? Is he gonna,
you see,
and
you're pulling on
great
my.
story.
Hmm?
And then it's got that iconic moment because it was being billed as the end of an era.
Yep.
And the end of the match, and honestly, I think they should have ended the match or ended WrestleMania with this match. Because then the final moment would have been on the stage. You see the three of them helping each other to the back, and you see the Undertaker. You see them all just kind of like look back at the crowd. And if you think about it, like the Undertaker, Mark Calloway really was the last of that era. He was in the golden era, the new generation era, the attitude era, the ruthless aggression era, the reality era, the PG. Like there is no one that will ever come close to him. It's not going to happen.
For me, dude, like you mentioned, like that story from, and I'll mention this before we go into that one. 27, like coming after just retiring Shawn, Triple H getting in there, and like the fact of the matter is, like Triple H, like with those chair shots, and he beat the crap out of the Undertaker
Oh,
to the point where he gets him in the Hell's Gate, brother, and that's it. Like the moment of him just like the sledgehammer comes down and he taps out and he passes out. That's it for the game. Then the Undertaker shaves his head, shaves all the hair off, and he has that look there with with like no hair practically, like the little thing here, like the mohawk kind of deal.
the
Just
Brohawk.
the Frohawk, Jesus, the Frohawk. And then that hair, he goes in there with Triple H. The Hell in a Cell match is so good. Like the super kick to the pedigree, Shawn Michaels is conflicted and he's just so upset. And then Taker takes out Shawn. Tombstone 1, 2, 3. Shawn makes the count. Such a magical match. If you've not seen it, it's 11 years old now, but it's a great match. And then the last of the Attitude Era hugging on the stage, and like you mentioned, you realize like these are the last guys here that represent
Yeah.
the Attitude Era. These are the guys that created those moments and memories.
It
Like
was our childhood. Like it
it
was
was our
the
childhood.
end of that.
It was the end of it. As I mean, Triple H and Shawn now practically run the company, which is crazy to think about.
Like it's weird, like seeing Triple H now. I remember when he first showed up in WWE, like when he was Hunter Hearst Helmsley, the Greenwich Blue Blood, and even Shawn Michaels when he was with Marty Jannetty, and when he was the Heartbreak Kid, and now he's the Heartbreak Grandpa.
Heartbreak.
The only thing he's breaking is a hip.
Oh,
He's not breaking. But seeing that, like, it's tough to see them and see like Undertaker and all that's like, wow. And that moment, because I can see that moment in my head, and I'm looking back at the crowd, and I think Triple H was at a time when he knew he didn't have many matches left.
nah. I mean, he only would do like special occasions. Like after the match with Taker, he would wrestle Brock at the following Mania, but he didn't really do much after that. He was mostly fulfilling his role as the COO,
As a
and
corporate.
yeah, he was corporate. But I mean, I'll mention this because this is the only other Undertaker match we didn't talk about both sides. The fact that we'll get into the special thing at the Survivor Series and the Hall of Fame. Were you a fan of? Because it's crazy that people kind of like dismiss this match because they only talk about the two. The American Badass one with him at WrestleMania 17. A lot of people like that match. The last ride out the corner, they beat the crap out of each other on the stage. They're just going out in the crowd. Like, were you a fan of the American Badass against Triple H at that time?
Oh yeah.
That
I mean,
match,
not only that, but it also gave us Motorhead, at WrestleMania.
yeah. And then Taker coming out to rolling all the way down that ramp, and I mean, a lot of people claim it's one of the best WrestleManias, which in my opinion it is, and I'm
Yeah,
sure.
WrestleMania 17 is one of the best.
But Taker and H, man, like the first time that they're facing each other at WrestleMania, like it was good. Like it was really, really good.
And I think and this goes beyond Undertaker. This is real. When you have two talent, whether it's women, men, whatever, that just get each other and get the business side, it just works. It's like you have there have been matches that we've discussed where it just didn't work. Whether it's one person or the other, it just didn't work. But I want to go back really real quick to the Undertaker versus Brock. Brock didn't want to do it.
No, and I mean, but the history at the time, if you remember that UFC thing that they had that confrontation, you want to go? You want to
You
go?
want to do it?
You want to do it?
There was general animosity, which I'm glad they squashed it, but I guess maybe this is BS, maybe it isn't. Brock didn't want to do it and wasn't going to do it. And it took Undertaker saying, it's fine. It's business. Let's go
Now,
do business.
if I remember correctly, why he had such heat with Brock. So he came back at WrestleMania 20, like we discussed in
Yep.
'04, and Brock had left to go do college football. Um,
Oh, to do pro football, and he got cut from that. Then
yeah, thank
tried
you.
to do New Japan, where he wrestled Shinsuke Nakamura, and actually a good match.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, and that was the debut of. Remember, he called the F5 the verdict.
Yeah.
Oh, all right, thank you for correcting me. I meant this pro football. So yeah, Minnesota Vikings, right? Like you mentioned.
Yep. Practice squad.
Ah, yes. Okay, thank you. My football terminology. Anyway,
Oh, same here. Same here. Foosball's the devil.
thank you, Bobby Boucher and friggin'
My
Mama said.
mama said foosball the devil, and
So anyway,
oh, we,
football is not my thing either. My dad loved football, but yeah, that's how it.
I don't understand it. Like I couldn't explain the rules to you if you had a gun in my head. I couldn't do it.
Touchdown. That's about it. Anyway, touchdown. Brock Lesnar tried out for the Minnesota Vikings. So the story was, I think he was going to feud with the Undertaker after WrestleMania 20, and that was when he
Yep.
quit. And the Undertaker was like, "Oh, so you don't want to do business?"
Well, not only that, but it's Taker's saying, and Taker was a company guy.
And he
And
did the favors for Brock.
Vince had given everything to Brock. He'd given him every chance to succeed. And something like a month before WrestleMania, Brock goes to Vince and says, "Yeah, I'm not renewing my contract. I quit."
Well, for Brock at the time, if you remember, I think it was the travel. He like was starting to really hate the travel.
Yeah. Well, that and he also had some other issues.
Right. And I mean, with Taker at the time, like I can understand what he can felt like when he was the champion. Like he's like, dude, I did all these favors for you. Now you don't want to do the favors for me.
Yeah. Another, it's not related to Streak, but it's a WrestleMania story that I kind of like. Main event WrestleMania 14, Shawn Michaels versus Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Hmm.
There was some genuine concern that Shawn Michaels was not going to do the job for Stone Cold.
The
To the
Undertaker.
point where, right on the other side of the curtain, Undertaker's waiting. And he even said that he was literally going to drag HBK back out to the ring. He was going to make him do it.
So the line goes, if he doesn't drop that title, I will go out there and drop him.
Yeah. And everybody has confirmed its legitimacy. Like Sean even said, like I guess Taker had talked to him before the match and said, "You're doing it, right?" He said, "You're doing it." And I guess he tried reassuring him, and Taker's like, "No, I'm not asking you, are you doing it? I'm telling you,
You're doing
you're
it.
doing."
Yep.
And at that time, that was when Taker was really starting to become the leader. And it's like yeah, I'm good. I'm not gonna, I'll do it, Mr. Taker, sir. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Do what you need to do.
And I think that really solidifies and symbolizes his legacy because now, before we get to the Hall of Fame, because it's personally, I'm going to say this, Dan, I think you can concur with me. It's one of the best all-out Hall of Fame speeches
Oh
ever,
yeah,
ever. But they did
whatever.
ever. But they did the Survivor Series tribute of over 30 plus years
Yeah,
with WWE and great tribute. But and people were there like Godfather, Savio Vega, and people that he's worked with.
Rikishi, the
The
BSK.
BSK. For me, it was great to see, but it's tough when you just have the Thunderdome and there's no people there. But it was great.
Yeah, and honestly, this is why I hate COVID. That is a moment where that should have happened in front of the crowd.
Hmm.
Which, funny enough, Royal Rumble 2024 is at Tropicana Field.
Which is hilarious to think about. It's so.
If they don't make reference to the Thunderdome, I'm
I,
sorry.
I'm dead. I'm dead if they don't. Well, here's the funny part. You hear in the news about a COVID comeback with everything that's going on with boosters and now, and it's like, you fucking kidding me too? Because also the fact that we're going into January and it's a Tropicana field, like the universe is crazy at times, man.
You know what? I'm sure they got all that shit still in the warehouse somewhere.
I'm sure they do too. But yeah, no, it was a nice ceremony. It was a nice piece to
Yeah.
close their Survivor Series. But it got better when we had the Hall of Fame. And that speech where he's talking about his mom, he's talking about growing up in the territory days and working with Kane and Triple H, and he just, oh, it was
The
beautiful.
genuine advice, it wasn't even just wrestling. He made it known you can apply this to your life.
Yeah. And he is such a storyteller that people don't even realize. Like it's great to see him, and it's isn't it funny to see like we talk about like AJ talk about the Instagram post, John Cena. Like this is a man now who does one man shows. He's been on podcasts, and he protected that character for years. For
Yeah.
years. It's nuts.
You know, I remember when they did the last ride, and it's like you're seeing him, and it's like you're not seeing the Undertaker. You're seeing Mark,
Mhm.
and for what it was, the Boneyard match, I think was a good match to go out on.
Agreed. I mean, for me, if I was to like really sum it up here, like we talk about the matches, we talk about presentation. Undertaker is one of those guys we talk about. He could work with a broom and it'd be good. Now, sometimes he's not going to have the best match, but he puts his
No,
heart and soul into everything he does. But for me, if I was to say this about the Undertaker, like we talk about the Hall of Fame speech, we talk about everything for him being a leader. One of the things that really came out of that was he puts on the hat, he puts on the jacket at the end of that. Great advice, profound speech. He does never say never. Do you think that we will ever see the Undertaker wrestle one more time?
see, I'm conflicted with that with this. As a dead man, no, dead man's done. In a tag team match, maybe like, and he has since said, mentally his mind is ready, but his body, he said, my body just can't do it, and I think he's in his 60s now, maybe end of 50s, beginning of 60s. Dude, you got nothing left to prove. Like, you've done it all. There's nothing left to do. You have won all the titles there are to win. Maybe, a tag team match where literally all he would have to do is just come in, hit a choke slam, 1, 2, 3, done. Maybe.
See, I'm conflicted on it too because as much as I would love like that's our childhood too, like we mentioned earlier with the Attitude Era, I love to see it, but I'm like with you. I'm like, dude, like you've done everything. You don't need to do this. You don't need to go out there. You don't need to Ric Flair it, and
Please don't.
please don't. But no, I think if really we could tie a bow on it, Dan, like we talk about these matches and it makes me
Yeah.
smile. He's one of the best characters, best of all time, and it makes me smile and it makes me sad at the same time that he's done. But I understand why he's done. Doesn't have anything to prove, but he just
Yeah.
offered so much and gave his heart and soul to the business.
Like, and here's the thing: like if when he shows up backstage and all that, like, you know, some of the stuff he says just like, oh, okay, like they're not playing the video games, all right, whatever. But connecting with a crowd is something that only he can do. It's no one is able to connect with the crowd the way that he does.
It's like we say with everything, and one of my things I'm very big into the show, and I think you can agree with this quote: "Life is an art form, and while applying our crafts, let's just to try to apply our crafts in amazing fashion." There's a science and there's mechanics of connecting and really performing your craft. It's an art. It's what wrestling is. It's an art.
Oh, absolutely. And you look at some of the guys that are doing there now, and like longevity wise, who's somebody that you can look at now and just say, okay, 20 years, this guy could be at an Undertaker level.
Roman Reigns, MJF.
Oh yeah, I think in their respective careers, yeah, like You look at Roman. Roman is a guy, he doesn't need to be on every SmackDown, every Raw, every, whatever. He doesn't need to. Roman Reigns is an attraction at this point.
I mean, people will say what they will about him not defending the title, but I'm like, when he shows up, it's special. Like as the recording, he's going to be on SmackDown this coming Friday. But God dang it, man! Like that dude's been through hernias, he's been through leukemias. He can take a rest, and also he's been with
He's
the belt.
beaten cancer twice.
Yes, he's beaten cancer twice, but he's been with
And
the company for 21 years. Like, leave the man alone.
and Maxwell Jacob Friedman, I mean, here's a guy who, like Undertaker, was a heel for years, called himself the devil, but now you call him, what does he call himself now? The people's jerk or the people's
No, the
schmo?
people scumbag, but I'm your
People's
scumbag.
scumbag. And it works.
It's like when Mr. Kennedy was doing asshole in TNA. We are assholes. We are assholes.
And, it's the fact that Taker's even called MJF out and is basically like, yeah, this kid's got something.
That's the ultimate honor and the ultimate, just stamp of approval if the Undertaker sees something. Now you may not disagree with him about wrestlers being soft, and he does have a valid point about that. But I mean, the man has done it for over 30 plus years. He's learned from the likes. I mean, his first match was with Bruiser Brody, for God's sake, and he learned quickly. And he's been
Oh
in there.
yeah, he learned. He learned.
Oh God, like like he even talks about it on Stone Cold's podcast, like stiffing him, calling the match, and then Brody puts his boot up and hits him so hard in the face.
He learned.
He learned. But speaking of learning, I mean, the best thing to say about the Undertaker is you learn, you adapt, you grow as a person, and
Oh
he's
yeah.
there to put you over. And Maven has even said this, like he didn't have to get eliminated by me and thing. He did it. He put me over, and people still talk about Maven
And
eliminating the Undertaker in the Rumble.
Undertaker tried to get him over.
Like he beat him for the hardcore title. I think the original match at WrestleMania 18 was going to be him and Maven, but Undertaker was like, "No, I want to work with Ric Flair."
And even then, like that.
That was a big thing. Like Cody Rhodes talks about it. He's like, he let me drop kick him, and he took a bump in the Rumble for me.
Yeah. So I mean, it's as of our this recording, Mike. Let me ask you: would you want to see the Undertaker back one more time?
I'm there with the yes or no, but if I'm completely honest as a person and not thinking from a fanatic standpoint, I think he should just stay put, be with your wife, be with your kids. You come and visit, of course, teach lessons, but you don't need to get back in that ring.
Because
No.
let's not forget, but where is our next pay per view?
Oh God, for the next pay-per-view. November 4th, folks, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. No, don't do it. I don't care how good the money is. Don't do it. Don't do it.
But see, now this isn't Vince McMahon money. This is Endeavor money.
Oh man, I could see them giving him a phone call to come back and do a match. No, no. And oh God, if he's on NXT like on camera on a camera roll, which probably he is. I don't want no. Don't set anything up for Saudi Arabia. Don't do it.
You
Don't.
know, I would love to see him do something with Joe Gacy. Not wrestling, but work with him because Gacy, there is something special about Joe Gacy.
I mean, they broke up the dyad and the schism, but I mean, like,
Well, because the
if
two
he,
guys left.
well, yeah, and Ava Rain is kind of like, they're gonna do something with the Rock's daughter, but he's on his own, and it's like if there's anybody to give him advice on his character, it's the Undertaker.
I don't think she can do the eyebrow thing.
Oh, God. And I like her. I honestly, I don't hate the girl, but she's very green still, and she still needs more seasoning.
Oh yeah, but you know what? Nepotism is alive and well. I'll just say that.
Oh man, look at Nia Jax coming back for God's sake. Oh
No,
no,
no.
we're gonna get Rhea and Nia Jax, and I don't want to
To
see.
to quote a certain thing that I person I like to quote quite a bit. Stupid.
Stupid. But what is not stupid is the Undertaker's career, his longevity, and the streak. The streak will be alive and well no matter how many losses he's taken from Brock and Roman at WrestleMania, from just creating moments and memories. The man is a legend. The man is an icon. And there will never be another Undertaker, Dan.
No. Nor
But
should there be.
no. But what will there be is more episodes of this great show, Uncaged, because Daniel, as we are nearing the end of season 2, our next episode, folks, as we did our worst SummerSlam matches the episode previous, but we are now going to talk about our best and worst Money in the Bank matches. And I'm looking at you, Baron Corbin.
Yeah. And don't forget, right next to you, Damien Sandow, I'm looking at you.
I'm looking at you, Damien Sandow.
And John Cena, surprisingly, we can see you.
We can see you. First of all, oh man, I cannot wait to talk in that next episode. I'm just going to put this out there of he grabs and then that face he makes when he takes it. Like, come on, man. Like, really? Really? Oh, God. Should have been Cody, by the way, with Damian Sandow.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get to that next episode, Dan. But we hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Uncaged, talking about the Undertaker, his streak, and just two dudes, two broskies, if like MJF and Adam Cole, us two bro chachos talking about pro wrestling. But I will not throw you overboard and hit you with the diamond ring. So before we close this out, as we always say with the show, thank you for listening. Like for real, if you're not subscribed, we are over 600 followers on this channel, folks. Come on, what are you doing? Give us a like, give us feedback, give us something. When we give
Right
you
down
shorts,
there at the bottom. You know
at
what
the
to
top,
do.
you know what to do. So, if you want to follow us, it's at SM Show 1 MCL 92. It is DCrimmins1 on Instagram, StephenMikeShow.com, Capital Championship Wrestling, Lingerie Fighting Championships. Links will be in the description. And go to the playlist and listen to both seasons of Uncaged. Check out Deep Into the Heart of Wrestling with myself, Robert Davis, and Nicola. We have more shows coming up on that front. Check out On the Mic with Mike. Check out the LFC podcast. Check out everything that is on the Mike Larkin YouTube. And thank you guys so much as well, man. Since I started this back up and working with you, my brother, and so many people, 600 followers is crazy and over plus. Let's keep it going. Let's keep ranking them up. Man,
Only moving forward.
only moving forward, onward and upward. And dude, we'll promote this as well since it is going to be happening next month. We are doing our thing on the Max show, and I'll have you promote TSK in a second. But you and Dazzy and Teddy, knowledge title, you and Mo, tag titles, myself and Beer in the promo exhibition. Go ahead. You're doing the whoop-de-doo. You're doing the whoop-de-doo. Is this confidence, or are you just like, you know what? You're the Orange Cassidy. You're doing this. Insert graphic here. That's what you're doing.
You know what? He at least does this. I'm just going to do
Whoopity-doo. You know what?
whatever.
You were Robbie Hart in The Wedding Singer. Cindy and Scott are getting married. Whoopity-doo.
I got other things to do.
Oh,
Better things to do.
this man. I love your confidence and I love
But
your
we're going to leave that for another time.
I love your
I got
honesty.
things cooking for y'all. I got some things cooking.
All right. I love your honesty and I love your confidence, my friend. Also, do you want to plug the TSK? Because you guys did some great Wrestle Dream reviews as well.
We did. We recently did a quick reaction for Wrestle Dream, which I thought was a great show. We discussed the arrival of Adam Copeland, which I am sorry, I will not refer to him as such. I will refer to him as Edge.
It's hard.
Just Edge.
I'm gonna add that real quickly to you. It's very hard to do the rated R superstar Adam Copeland. I can't do it. I can't do it. No.
And I will say this: kudos to Christian Cage for one of the best actions, which is basically just saying, "Go fuck yourself."
Go fuck yourself.
Who would have thought all these years later that Christian would be one of the best heels in wrestling right now?
Go get your mother. She doesn't have clearance. Security.
Going after his own daughter.
It's so great. Well, I'm going to say this. Y'all cannot go fuck yourselves because we want you to listen to these shows. We're not telling you to go fuck yourselves. We're just talking about Christian. So keep subscribing, keep liking, keep reacting. And also, we've been putting out shorts here, folks. So if you want to check out some shorts, we got a lot of views on those, man. Just keep on the view count on the shorts. Just keep on a view count on everything all day, every day. Everything. Dan's got some stuff cooking in the works, and we have more of these shows for you. We're coming close to the end of the season, and then we're going to give you a little bonus with Daniel talking about Fight Forever and going mad because No, he's shaking
I'm
his
looking
head.
at you, Anthony Khan.
Oh God. We'll be talking about that later season. So for later episodes. So for Daniel Carmen's, not Anthony Khan. My name is Mike Clark, and thank you for listening to another edition of Uncaged. And we outright. We'll see you in the next episode.